have to really kind of. 2 minutes, y'all. 2 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, we are. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the ultimate autonomy part. That's just we have to. I mean, and once we made that decision, which we did at the General Assembly House, once you do that, you can add that back. So and that's the decision we made. So there we go. 1 minute. Hey, y'all, it's Luke 16, 1 through 13. This is a fun passage. Just to give you a heads up, I have no idea. Good. I mean, just. A lot of input today. A lot of input from y'all. I know. That's why you got to pick up the slack, man. Oh, you can't replace Phil. So, there we go. I mean, are you going to flash the light, or are you just going to wave your hand? Yeah. Well, I could flash the light at him, but that would be. All right. Glad to have everybody here today on this beautiful, beautiful day and a fun passage in the book of Luke. It's been a real interesting week to read. Everybody, you start getting out commentaries and start reading articles about the passage, and you get to see everybody's all different scholarships, perspective. And so this week, it seemed like I read at least 20 articles, I know, and several commentaries. And personally, they all said the same thing. We don't have a clue. And then you have to pretend like you kind of say something, and so you kind of ramble the articles. And so, and then everybody kind of tails off into their own thing. So just think about this passage, of course, in and of itself, but and then the larger book of Luke, maybe, too, but also what is the purpose of a parable anyway? What do we think the purpose of a parable is? And what? Okay, a related point to real life. That's definitely that is definitely an approach to what a parable is. Tell the story. Yeah, it's kind of a once upon a time, but based in, but it does have some connection to reality, sort of. But also parables are kind of destabilizing. I think is one way to put it. They have some kind of a shock value to get our attention. The Good Samaritan. I mean, I really, this is a personal pet peeve, but I mean, I only have a couple, but the thanks, yeah, a couple at a time. But when I mean, somebody helps somebody on the side of the road, and we go, they were a Good Samaritan. That's a part of the essence of what the Good Samaritan's about. The other part of the Good Samaritan is that the Samaritan, to call a Samaritan good in the day would have been just total. I mean, there was, you just don't do that. A good Russian, yeah, a good communist. We just like, huh? Or a good Nazi or something. I mean, it's like we don't hear that way, and they wouldn't have heard that way either. And so the story, it's kind of a once upon a time story based in real life. There were Samaritans. There were people who got beat up on the road from Jerusalem. There were people who got robbed. There were Levites. There were priests. But yet, there's this twist to where the Samaritan turns out to be the good guy, and the priest and the Levite turn out to be not so good. And so the people listening to it are like, wait a second. But it gets their attention. It grabs their attention. So parables do that. But now the other side of parables too, I think, is that we always look for this easy answer, maybe that it gives us this ratio 1-to-1. If you do this, then this is what happens, and I think that might fall apart in this parable today. And also, we tend to assign placement, like the prodigal son. We would say the dad is God. Okay. Good, and then we start dividing up who the sons were. Oh well, those are the good boy. The older son are the Pharisees, or the Jews who stayed home, who stuck to things, and the prodigal is the one who went off and is the real bad sinner but came back home, and we're not sure why God let them come back, and then we could. In our own lives, we can sit around and go, well, such and such is, not naming any names, but, such and such would be the prodigal son. And why in the world would his family let him come back? That's terrible. But, or those kind of things. So this is, think about that in light of this parable today. Here we go. Luke chapter 16, and 1-13. And so if you have a New Revised Standard, these little helpful subtitles that they give us in the Bible, remembering that way back when there were no chapters and verses. It was just straight written through and no headings. What does y'all's Bibles give you there at the beginning of this? Okay, the shrewd. So you have it in NIV? In NIV. The NIV calls it shrewd. The New Revised Standard called it what? Dishonest. Okay. And then, what is it? Common English, the CEV, Common English, I think it was, called it something to the effect of, I have it written down for the sermon, but how we manage money faithfully. See? Okay. So the dishonest manager. So that gives you a heading. That it already. That's the one thing I just like about headings, is that it gives you something you're already thinking in your head before you get into it, and that might not always be fair. Like, if you read Yelp before you go eat at a restaurant, and you may be misled just because a disgruntled person, or I don't know, maybe I don't know. Let's read this. Then Jesus said to the disciples, there was a rich man, which if you read that in Greek, there's this little symbol there that means, once upon a time, there was this rich man. There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was squandering his property. So that he summoned him and said to him, what is it that I hear about you? Give me an accounting of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer. And then the manager said to himself, what will I do? Now that my master is taking the position away from me, I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do so that when I am dismissed as a manager, people may welcome me into their homes. So summoning his master's debtors one by one, he asked the first, how much do you owe my master? And he answered, 100 jugs of olive oil. And he said to him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 50. And then he asked another, how much do you owe? And he replied, 100 containers of wheat. And he said to him, take your bill and make it 80. And his master commended this dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes. Whoever is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much, and whoever is dishonest in very little is dishonest also in much. If then you have not been faithful with the dishonest wealth, who will entrust to you the true riches? And if you have not been faithful with what belongs to another, who will give you what is your own? No slave can serve two masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. Okay, is it familiar? The last part, the last verse, right? Okay, good. So, what did you hear? Oh, okay. Who are the people of the light? That's, wow. Didn't think about starting there, but that's good. That jumps out to you, you know. Who are the people of the light? Okay. Who are the people of the light? Okay, the first generation, maybe. That's good. I mean, so compared to who? You know, so the first generation Christians, you mean? Okay. Yeah, so who he's talking to, the people of the light, yeah. Okay. So, is that the only question that jumps out to you about that part? About the light? Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately, he's talking about, you know, the contrast between the people of the faith as opposed to the people. You know how John does a great job of saying this world, the world is, when you use the term the world, well, you know how that is in the world, that the world is, in that way, is an image or metaphor for something that's evil or something that's not spiritual, right? And so the kingdom of God is kind of set over against the world. So in this term, the people of light are set over against the people who are not of the light. So the contrast is basically, at least in that little interpretation, you are, the people of faith are kind of set over against the people of the generation that wouldn't be considered a part of the faith. And they're saying, hey, those people over there know how to act better in the world than the people of light, which is kind of a cut to the people of faith. They're saying they just don't know how to act.
It's very strange to me that the manager's going to be fired because he's not taking care of the master's goods. But he turns around and he cuts off and he says, do you give me $50 and I'll wipe out the $100? And the master says, that was a great job.
That's right.
And so,
It doesn't jive, right? Especially from business. You see, you know, okay, yeah, I got you. So there is one perspective that I read this past week, and like I said, I read about 20 to 20, at least 20 articles, because I kept going, okay, I don't necessarily know what's going on here. I mean, every year I'm faced with this passage, and I know, or every 3 years, and I know it's coming, and I dread it every year. But then, because here's the other part I dread, is I start reading the articles and I get the same thing every year, that they don't know either. And so it just kind of, I've read this article where they filled up a whole big space of saying, I don't know. And so when you could have just written, I don't know. Yeah. We don't, yeah. Okay, this is what, the bankruptcy's point of view over here. Thank you, sir, for sharing that. Yeah, you got something. Some articles said, well, it might even indicate where the dishonest part comes from, that the manager was actually charging them more, and he's scamming off the top. Anyway, so that's it. So when he cuts it back there, it's really back more to the honest. Maybe. Mm. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. He can't be you're going to have to give an account, but let's get this trial over with so we can get to the hanging. I mean, yeah, you're no longer. But then he keeps him. And what is it with you folks out here who are in business, y'all, I mean, y'all work, I'm just a little old preacher. Okay, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know anything about anything. So you get this guy, and you've basically told him you're getting the pink slip, you're canned. And then you go, oh, you kind of acted shrewdly, which I would be interested to hear what people think about the word shrewd. When I hear it, I have a certain, it is a compliment, but it's almost a backhanded comment. Oh, he's shrewd. Like, he's really sharp, but don't trust him with your, with your family or something,
One of the interesting things to me too was that he was going to this person from owed money to the master
Uh-huh.
and gave him a deal
Yeah.
so that he would
Yeah.
be welcomed into the
Oh,
home
right.
of that
Right.
person who owed money
He's trying to give him a deal, right?
after he didn't have
Yeah.
a job.
And here's another thing on that part. I don't know. So he's thinking about, I'm going to be couch surfing here pretty soon, and I'm going to have to go find some places to live. So what do I do? And so if I help them, then they'll help me later. Does it work? Do people really do that? Okay, they would. Okay. I mean, do people really help you? Like after, hey man, well he cut my bill, so I'm going to let him come ride the couch for a couple of days. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so, and then he gets rewarded for the stealing. Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, this idiot. Everybody heard this idiot. Hold on. Keep that in mind, y'all. Hold on. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. He was pretty, I mean, he's, okay. Yes. Well, I don't know. It's, it's so everybody has their own perspective. From the, yeah. So, what do we do with this passage, y'all? See why I read so many articles this week? Yeah, it's like, yeah, I could have picked the Old Testament passage, and I could have picked yeah, what in the world? Why would I have picked this passage today?
No one can serve two masters.
Okay, here's another. Okay, this is a good question too. This is my question because ultimately, and I do contend this in the sermon. I'm not even sure Luke understands why Luke put this passage in here, because these interpretations that he has Jesus throw out, they're multiple. There's the children of light are not as smart as the people of this world in functioning in the world. Well, the church could be charged with that, right? Because ministry isn't necessarily cost effective, is it? I mean, face it, we put an elevator in. Elevators are what? Expensive. They're expensive to maintain. How much does it get used? I don't know. Do we really get a bang for our buck out of putting in an elevator? I mean, especially after you've already built the building. I mean, in my last church, they didn't have an elevator. Yeah, added it on later. That's a real, yes. Oh, trust me. And then when yeah. And then, and that's what happened. I said, this really is not a cost-effective thing. But ministry is not cost-effective. Let's face it. We have HCAM here at the church, and we ask people to come bring food here so we can give it away. What's cost effective about that? It's not. And so, it calls us to a different purpose of what we're trying to do. So, so everything that we do in the church is not necessarily cost effective. It just isn't. And but that's not what ministry is. It's not. That's where the church is kind of funky, because we're an institution and we have to run certain aspects of it as a business, and then other aspects of it we go, no, this isn't business. It's not. And so it's a really hard institution to kind of navigate that way.
Even those things that you do,
Mhm.
like a
Mhm.
mission
Mhm.
oriented.
Mhm.
If you do it, and you do it, and you do it, and you don't see
Yeah.
any results from it.
Right. Okay.
Then you go, this
Yeah.
isn't, we're not attracting
maybe we need to reevaluate
to reevaluate whether this.
what ministry is.
Yeah.
But that's fair. Now, see, now that could be a good argument. Oh, well, we're going to keep doing this because this is the way we've always done it, and if we for whatever thing we've ever said we're going to do, we're going to keep giving this way. It's kind of like my issue with Toys for Tots. People give gazillion bikes because the people who were given the bikes when they were growing up for Christmas, they wanted a bike. Now kids don't necessarily want bikes. What they want? Video games. Yeah. And so, but the people who are giving aren't going to give you video games because we're like, I didn't play with that. I don't want that. We want to give you what we want. So we want to give the way we want to give instead of going, let's give in a way that's effective. So in that way, the people of this world are a little more shrewd than the children of light, because sometimes the children of light are, we're going to keep having this thing this way in our church because this is the way we've done it. And then when nobody shows up, they're like, well, all right, don't care about them. We're going to keep doing it anyway. It's like, is that what we're really trying to do here? Oh, okay, maybe not. And yeah, oh yeah, it happens all the time. Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, I'm pretty good about that. But so, and then you have a couple other interpretations like this. If you then have not been faithful with dishonest wealth, who will entrust you with the true riches? What does that mean? I mean, what is dishonest wealth? I mean, okay. And what are true riches? Yes, yeah, yeah. You see, is it? Okay, yeah, okay. So see, there are several interpretations that are pitched out here at the end, and then we get to the ultimate one at the end. You can't serve two masters. You either love God or wealth. And then that puts us to, is that what this story is about, really, when we go back through it? And I'm like, I'm not totally sure that's where we are. And isn't it what our discomfort here is that we are Christians and we're told all throughout our lives, don't be dishonest, right? Don't be dishonest. Tell the truth, which can hedge. But, I mean, and don't rip people off. But yet, this guy, in ripping someone off, gets rewarded. And the guy who's at the top, who some have referred to as an idiot in this passage, are we saying this is God? And then we're going, God, why do you do that? Right? If we break parables down and start assigning positions, which may or may not be always the best thing to do with parables, I might point out. Sometimes we might get ourselves in trouble. Because here's the thing. If we assign that to God, if we assign the rich man as God, which could be, then who is the manager? Jesus. Oh, so the manager, you want to say Jesus is the manager? No, okay. Who else might be? Which might mean that. Yeah, oh, finally. Oh, if we break this passage down that way, now what? How you want to look at it? Okay. But also, yeah, it could be saying that if we look at it that way, what about the times that, okay, not putting anybody on the spot, okay? What about the times that we aren't our motives aren't exactly the most pure? Or the times that we haven't been totally honest in the way we deal with things? Yeah. Which is kind of why we're here, right? Okay. And that's fair. But ultimately, too, if we look at it that way, which I'm not saying full disclosure, I'm still not totally, absolutely sure what this passage, I think it's really convoluted and really, really difficult. And I think that ultimately that's on purpose. And I think that a lot of times Jesus is using parables to convey what the kingdom of God is like. What is the kingdom of God like in this world? And what are some of the attributes of the kingdom of God? Forgiveness, grace, reconciliation that don't make any sense whatsoever in our world. And so if that's what we're trying to convey, and we're trying, and just like Good Samaritans or prodigal sons, you have to tell stories that get our attention and kind of smack us in the face. And this one certainly does, because everybody in this room is kind of like, wait a second, what's this? What's that? What's that? Why are we trying to figure all this out? And that ultimately, I mean, I don't know about all my motives. You know, as a minister, wanting people to come and be a part of the church, there is this really deep desire that I have, and I'm getting real honest here about my own self here, so just be well aware that on one level, it's really kind of, you go, oh man, I want as many people involved as possible. I want people to be involved in the faith because that is good. That's the Great Commission and all that. But at the same time, I have to deal with my own motives that, you know, ego and the like. Hey, it's great to have a lot of people come, you know, listen to me. So how is it that you navigate the kind of, those kind of, the arrogance and the true motive? I don't know. And that we all probably bring our own, I hate the word agenda because it does come with such a sting to it, but that we all come with our own issues of why we come or come be a part, and maybe our motives aren't always pure, and maybe we aren't always the most honest, but yet this God character here still recognizes and still can manage good even out of our own impurities. I think about Martin Luther. Not Martin Luther King Jr., Martin Luther, okay? I just found out recently that me saying Martin, that some people don't always understand who I'm exactly talking about. But Martin Luther, those who aren't familiar with the Reformation, okay? But Martin Luther was an amazing person for the faith, but he was also really anti-Semitic, okay? So he had his own baggage. Calvin, same way. Great man of theological aspects of the faith. But he also had some aspects about him where he was pretty cruel to people who didn't, you know, had adhered to one baptism and the like, you know. And all the people throughout the faith, they all have their amazingness aspects of their, but they also have their flaws too. And, you know, I can toss myself right in there as well. And so this shrewd, dishonest manager person who has his own self issues going on here about trying to take care of himself, but in the end actually does something good for at least the people receiving the bill, that were his motives pure? Not so much. But the God at least the God figure in this passage steps in and offers him some reconciliation and keeps him on. You know? And I say, yikes. But guess what? My life is messy, and the church is messy. And people that I'm willing to step back and go, yeah, there's a dishonest person, or also do things that I go, Didn't see that coming. That was amazing. Wow. Yikes. Whoa. So maybe there isn't really this complete, solid black and white answer that we put down here that's crystal clear, but it's much more a parable that makes me step back and go, examine my life and say, ooh, where are the places that I'm not the most pure, or that I have these issues, but yet there's still this God that keeps welcoming me back one more time. You're not fired yet. You're not fired yet. And still keeps going, hey, man, that was pretty cool. And maybe we can all sit around and go, but that God is still going, yeah, come back one more day. Come back one more day. And then that, I have to say, that makes me feel a little better. That might not be it could be, Luke would go, God, that's so stupid, Neil. That is so off base. That is not what I had in mind. And I would go, okay, well, you please tell me now, would you? I would like to know. I says, yeah, because I'd like to know between now and 3 years from now when this passage comes up again. And I want to tackle it one more time because I always come back to it because I just have to keep fighting with it. And maybe that's the other part, is that we want these things settled, and maybe faith isn't as settled as we want it to be in our own lives and in the church, that it really does take more time to ponder and to struggle and work with than just go, okay, this is easy. Now let's go home so we can, beat the Baptists to the restaurant. Mm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I think that's exactly right. That's it. That sitcoms tie themselves up in 30 minutes, and only the Castaway. Remember the Castaway? It's old now. Tom Hanks. He gets remember Wilson, the volleyball with the blood on his hand. When he gets to the end, I love that movie because he gets to the end, and then he has these, it's an intersection, and you don't know which way he goes, and the movie just goes off, and you go, oh, well, yeah, you're welcome. Well, yeah. Well, if you hadn't seen it by now, man, if you haven't seen that movie by now, I'm sorry. I mean, that's like Citizen Kane. Don't tell me. But that there's this place of where we're always going to be struggling with faith and struggling with ourselves and our own motives and struggling with even other people, and how it's easy for me to look at somebody else and go, boy, they're a terrible person. They're terrible. In the church. I can't believe they're in a church. And yet, they come through with something you just go, oh my gosh, wow, that was amazing. And there's this God figure that always says, one more day, come back tomorrow, and we'll keep working. Maybe that's it. No, I mean, different articles do, but that's about it. Yeah. No, there's. If somebody tells you they have the answer to this passage, they are misleading you. They are not being honest with themselves or with you. All right, let's pray. Gracious God, we give thanks for passages that do challenge us, but that we continually examine ourselves over against your grace, and how you keep welcoming us back for one more day. May we continue the struggle of our faith